Plot windows allows you to evaluate the utilization charts for secondary constraints. There are other options available in the plot windows, and we're going to be covering them in this video as well. So to access it, you can either click on this button over here in the toolbar, or you can come to view plot window, and also there is the Ctrl-Shift-P shortcut. So you see that for each secondary constraint, we have a chart, a utilization chart. So for each chart here, you have at the bottom of it the constraint name, the word usage, and the minimal and maximum value, the default minimum and maximum. At the maximum line, for example 6 here, you have a thin red line. Anything below this maximum line will be green, and anything above this line will be red. You can customize the coloring by coming into the secondary constraint table in the data maintenance, and you can change the plot color, the maximum value color, and some other display options as well, okay? And you can have a distinct coloring for each secondary constraint. If you want to add or remove plots here, you can, while the plot window is activated, you can come to the View menu, Configure Plots. Here, you can add or remove by using this toggle. And all the standard, holding Control to add it to the current selection, or holding Shift to select all in between, or the Control-A to select all of that works in here, okay? So you see that we have two different types of plots. We have the secondary constraint utilization, and we have the queued workload chart for each one of the primary resource. Okay, and we're going to be covering this later on in the video. All right. Another good functionality that you have, of course, is zooming in or out using holding Control and your mouse wheel. Here we are zooming in or out in the timeline, but if you hold your Control Shift and zoom in or out using your mouse wheel, you're gonna increase or decrease the bar height, similar to how it works in the overview or in the Gantt chart, okay, or in the trace chart as well. So there is, if you right-click, there is a right-click menu where it allows you to print the current secondary constraint. So if you right-click here, you are printing the testing headcount. If you right-click here, you are printing the factory headcount. And also the save data to this also happens for each one of them. So the print functionality is not very useful, so you can try it yourself. Nothing complex here, but I never found any usability for this. But the save data to disk actually exports the data into a CSV file. So let's open this file here. Right, so one important information is that it uses comma as the separator, and if your comma is not your standard separator, you can select, in Excel, select the column A, come to data, text to column, next, select comma over here, next again, and finish, so Excel does the splitting for you. So we have a few columns here. The first two are the date and time. So here is the usual layout format for the date and time, and here is in the Julian format, and you can change that to number to see it better. This is the current value, utilization value. This is the minimum value, this is the maximum value, and this is a true or false to tell you if the secondary constraint, factory headcount in this example, is being used to actually constrain or not your schedule. So for example, here you see that the first row is 1st of January, in the year is 2000, so it's a year, it's a date and time far away in the past. And the current utilization here is 0, of course, because there is no schedule in Opcenter APS at this date and time. The next date and time here is it's 9 of May, 7 a.m. in the morning. And at this date and time, my chart goes up to 4. That means that between this date and time and this date and time, the utilization is 0. And when we are in this date and time, my utilization goes up to 4. Okay, so similarly, when it's 9 of May, 5:36 p.m., the utilization goes down by 1. So between this date and time and this date and time, the value is 4. Okay, so keep that in mind if you want to do further analysis using Excel here. All right, coming back to here, we have the disable check and disable constraint. This is also for this particular secondary constraint here. In order to demonstrate that, let me reduce the maximum value, let's say 4. Right, so you see that I reduced the default maximum to 4, and now everything above the 4 line it's highlighted as red. So if you right click here, and the disable check allows you to suppress this warning message here. So for example, I'm gonna write a drag and drop, so you see that I'm gonna extrapolate my maximum if I do this drag and drop. Okay, so it asks you to undo this operation if you want to. If you click yes, it comes back to where you were. But if you click on no, it's gonna leave where you drop it. So if you right click and disable check, now drag and drop will not trigger any warning message. You can do that as well in the tools options menu here. Come to sequencer, warnings. You can suppress warnings, secondary constraint warnings, but when you do so, you are suppressing warnings for every constraint. Okay, while in here, you are only doing that for this secondary constraint here. So let me enable that again, do a new drag and drop to demonstrate that this option here also works. Okay, so let me re-enable it. Drag and drop now will trigger the message. Okay, also you can disable the constraint. So right now the constraint is enabled and this toggle box here is not flagged, disable secondary constraint. That means that if I reschedule now, the maximum value of 4 will be respected. But if I disable constraint, I disable this secondary constraint here. And now if I do a new schedule, you see that it will extrapolate the maximum. Okay, this here, it's going to disable all secondary constraints. So let me re-enable this. Let me flag this and do a new forward schedule. And you see that I'm still extrapolating because of this function. So disabling it, and because this constraint is enabled as well, now a new forward schedule will not extrapolate, so it will be respected. A new functionality that you have in the right-click menu is the edit calendar. When you do so, you are creating a new calendar exceptions. Of course, you can come to the secondary constraint calendar and add a new exception from here, but this is just a quicker way to do so. So let's say that from current date and time and 2 weeks later, my maximum will be only 2. So you see that only between this period here, I will have a maximum of 2. So that's an exception, a calendar exception. And if you want to remove this calendar exception, there is no way to do so from this screen, but you can do from the calendar, the secondary constraint calendar screen. Okay, so just deleted it and it's now back to normal. All right, so there is another functionality. So let me right click, come to new horizontal tab group. And you see if I drag and drop using the left mouse button, I am drag and dropping here, and it's highlighting what operations are contributing to this chart. But you see that, for example, here my maximum is 4. So if you drag and drop, you're gonna see what are those 4 operations. Here my maximum is 1, and you're gonna see what is the single operation. Actually, my maximum is 2, sorry. So you're gonna see those 2 operations that are contributing to this chart. But like this, you don't have a synchronized timeline. So you can try to synchronize here the best you can, but it's tricky. It's not that simple. You can use the overview as well, of course. You can add a new pane and change it to plots. Now the zooming in or out happens for the 2 screens in the same overview window. Okay, so you see that the horizontal line is synchronized between those 2 screens. Okay, There is a downside of this because currently the overview window is the one activated. So if you come to view, you don't have the configure plots screen. So if you want to add or remove charts, you're going to need to come to view, open a plot window, and from here you can remove and add. So let me remove and add, let me do an extrusion queued workload, because now I want to talk about the queued workload functionality. When you do so, you see that it's a little bit weird chart, because the y-axis is actually duration, and there is no right-click functionality. Okay. When you're selecting here, also in here, that selection will be applied as well. All right. So let me close this now. Okay, so this is a little bit confusing. So in order to simplify, let me schedule just two operations actually. Okay. So you see that this is the extrusion workload, but I have 0 because I don't have any queued workload in this example. As soon as I finish my profiling operation, I'm starting my extrusion operation. That means there is no queued workload. But if I drag and drop this operation to be here, for example, now I have a queued workload, right? And why this is important? Because it shows you the amount of job that it's waiting to be executed. But the y-axis here, the size of the bar, the height of the bar, it's the duration of the next operation, of the this operation here. Okay, so for example, if I drag and drop, let me cancel all highlights. If I drag and drop here, you see that this chart utilization is being applied by this operation over here. Okay, and it's as soon as the the profiling operation finishes, it's when I have a queued workload on the extrusion machine, right? So if you double click here, you see that duration is roughly 23 hours. So that's the size of the bar here. So if I put this operation in here, it's not increase the size of the bar vertically. It's gonna make this black bar actually just wider, right? Because the amount of work remains the same. It's just the duration of this queued workload that increases. Okay? All right, so let me schedule a new set of operations here so you can better understand this. Right, you see that the same because I am, as soon as my profile is finished, I'm starting my extrusion, so there is no queued workload in this example. But if I do this, you see that it's causing a little increase only. This is probably just close to 2 hours because you see that this operation is much shorter than this operation. Yeah, it's a little bit over 2 hours. So now this chart it's 23 hours plus 2, so roughly 25 hours in here, and you can see by this line that this is true. So drag and drop in here, you see that at this moment in here, only one operation is queued because only one profiling operation has completed. But in here, we have 2 operations in the queue because we have 2 profile operations that has been completed and none of my extrusion operation has started. And as soon as I start this blue operation, my chart comes back to being only one operation in the queue. And as soon as this second operation starts, my queue goes to 0, right? So let me do a full schedule now. And there you go. So you see that my queued workload goes up to close to 600 hours here. And the same, if you drag and drop, you can see all operations, all extrusion operations that are queued to be executed. So all of those operations here, they are highlighted. Let me make it a little bit cleaner. All of those operations highlighted now, they are waiting to start. So essentially, previous operations from them has been completed. So the waiting can be due to bottleneck resources or material availability, for example, or secondary constraint availability as well. So this is a great way for you to evaluate bottleneck resources. Most of the manufacturing units nowadays, they do not have a single bottleneck resource. What they have is what we call dynamic bottleneck. So depending on the product mix of your current manufacturing parameters, the bottleneck will change throughout time. And that queued workload can help you, evaluate and understand what you do in order to improve. So you see here that spiraling, extrusion, and profiling, they have high queued workloads. So probably those are the machines that you can evaluate in order to find a better way to schedule or to improve the capacity of those resources. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.